Hello, silly people, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Trey, and today let's talk about the website that I have learned the most from over the many years, 20 years to be exact, that it's been in existence. And I would also like to inspire you to start one, and that is a blog. So one of the first posts I ever did for the blog in way back in June 27, 2006 was for this studio a friend of mine wanted to make called Zombie Monkey Studios. And the idea for us back then was we were going to be a studio making animation and graphic novels, comic books, and all kinds of stuff. And this was supposed to be the logo for this imaginary studio. And we've all drifted into different realms and different areas of art. But this is just a cool idea that my first post and what we thought about way, way back then. So way back in my college days, one of the few things, well, a thing that I did a lot, I guess I'd say, is fan art. I was big into manga, animation, all the stuff that got me into art. Here you have Sasuke from Naruto, the manga. I think I started reading him around book 10, but Sasuke is my favorite character in that series. But my love of that and also of woodblock prints caused me to make something a little bit different. It was a stretch for me artistically, but I like the contrast between Naruto and Sasuke. But there's this artist, Tsukioka Yoshitoshi, whose art, woodblock prints, I loved, right? I liked the dynamics of this image, this long piece, vertical, two characters, right? And then in between them, there's this flight of birds going through, and there's action and there's drama, and it is glorious. I love this piece of art. The Duel at Horyaku. Horyokaku. The Duel at Horyokaku is the title of it. And so I wanted to make my own version using the Naruto characters. And so we have Sasuke up top and Naruto and an action mid-sequence battle scene. Naruto has his frog summon. Sasuke is coming down with his Chidori. And then in between there is Sakura petals as a stand-in for the actual character Sakura, who is the third member of the team. Contrasting these two, my love of two things, manga and also woodblock prints. And I really liked how this one turned out. And back here, there's the summon, the giant snake and the giant frog fighting in the background. And so for me, this all came together pretty well. But also my love of fan art, again, this time One Piece. For One Piece, I did this very in pen, just a very loose sketch of each character. Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Sanji, Usopp, Nico Robin, Tony Chopper, Brooke, and Frankie. Right? I love this series, and I wanted to capture each character kind of with like a signature stance, and I did it really quickly, just with pen, not really thinking about it, but I really liked how these characters came out, and so that caused me to then expand on it and develop it further into something that could be, a little bit more substantial, done in watercolor. And so I did a group shot of them like on a normal day on the Sunny Go or the Going Merry, if Frankie and Brooke are there. So I wanted like a group dynamic with them showing their own personalities, doing different things in their own character style, right? What would the characters do on a normal day on the Sunny Go Going Merry? And so I just kept doing it, working on it, expanding on it, and this is the result. So it took me some time, but I worked up those small ink sketches into inking. I did watercolors for them and then arranged them all. And I think this lineup, I'm pretty proud of this. This is this is like my fandom at max capacity, right? And then I did the watercolors and I laid out this lays out the step by step of the process of making it, my tools, getting it to board, the initial sketch, the layers for the watercolor. And this is the final image done in watercolor of all the characters doing what I think they would normally do on a normal day on the Sunny Go or Going Merry. Another piece that I really have a love of looking back is this. I was watching Pirates of the Caribbean, what is it, Curse of the Black Pearl with Johnny Depp a lot back then while I was drawing. And so I just started drawing these characters there's a French artist called Pierre Ailery, and I loved his art, Pierre Ailery. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take that style and also these characters and try to make a character design that is fairly faithful to the actual characters in that style. I think my brother has that image because I printed it out and he still has it, I think, in his garage. And I was like, hey, I haven't seen that in a long, long time. And so one of the more influential pieces, Peter Pan Following the Leader. And this one is pretty special for me because this is, I think, the first time where I was trying something a little bit different and something that would stick with me for, I guess, my artistic career. I don't know if I can really say that. But it started as, I love Peter Pan because that was the first animated film where it actually clicked. And I thought, okay, somebody makes drawings for a living. Somebody makes art. And so I was watching the movie and I thought of this idea of them in a line. The background is watercolor painting and the characters are done in, I think, computer. I think I drew them, inked them, scanned them in, and then did the colors digitally. But Wendy on the far left, Peter Pan on the far right, Tinkerbell, and then the Lost Boys and her brothers, Wendy's brothers, all following Peter Pan across the waters. And this is the value sketch done in just graphite to know where I have my darkest darks, my lightest lights. And this was the art that made me think, oh, I'm getting pretty good and I can mix these two things fairly reasonably, the watercolor backgrounds and characters that are drawn simply and they can still work. So watercolor is a medium that I thoroughly enjoy and have always wanted to get better with. And at a certain point I was doing some experiments with watercolor, but I thought of watercolor and woodblock prints, the Japanese style. And I thought of this one particular image caught in my mind, how in the years, it's the year of the tiger, the year of the rabbit, and the year of the dragon. And I thought of an illustration that puts those things together. And it is in that order. It's the year of the tiger, the year of the rabbit, year of the dragon. Now in Chinese folklore, the tiger and the dragon are opposing forces. The tiger is the king of the land and usually associated with bamboo forests. And the dragon is the king of the sea and water and storms. And I thought of those two opposing forces, but also with the rabbit being in between the two, because in, the zodiac, the Chinese zodiac, tiger, rabbit, dragon is the year sequence. And I liked that even with this image of the king of the land, the tiger, the king of the sea and storms as the dragon. And I just expanded on that from the loose drawing to a more developed sketch to what would actually be the final sketch with, sun pattern stripes. And I just kept developing that. broke out my watercolor materials, boarded it up because this is fairly large. I think the entire thing is one large sheet of watercolor. And I worked over it over quite a long time. But I like that it worked out as a triptych, a diptych, which is two images put together. And we have on the left the king of the land, tiger, king of the sea and storms, the dragon, and it works as a diptych, which is two images put together, right, to make one complete image. And it works. And the crashing waves, and land going towards the sea, and then there's like a nice, I think, circular pattern. But also I included the rabbit in the middle to go in the middle of these two. So then it expands to be a triptych. But the land, king, tiger, with the crashing waves, the rabbit in the middle, looking at the moon, because again, in Asian mythology, rabbits live on the moon or can live on the moon, making the elixir of life. So I wanted that, rabbit looking at the moon. And on the far right, we have the king of the sea and storms, the dragon, with whirlpools and lightning and clouds coming across the whole image, like almost covering the moon, but not quite. And I think I'd like to do this a little bit better. I think my skills now are different than back then, but I still like this image, right? It was a concept that I then executed on. And I think that's one of the things I really learned about this blog, is it helped me to execute on my ideas, take it down into bite-sized chunks where every week I would, do a little bit more and a little bit more. And it helped me focus, and also how to explain it to a reader in whatever notes I gave for these things. Now on to a piece that has become, unknowing to myself, something larger than it was. And this started just as a drawing, a value sketch of Hanuman, the Indian monkey king, right? He moving from west to east from India, it's Hanuman. In China, he became Sun Wukong. And in Japan, he's Son Goku, the monkey king. And I really liked how I just did it on a whim, a value sketch. But as I looked at it afterwards and was like, I really like this, and I'd like to make it a watercolor. And eventually, it became a very large watercolor. I have this red pencil here for size difference, but I took that value sketch, put it on watercolor paper, and then painted it up. And this one was a struggle for me. This was about 6 months off and on, and I couldn't quite get it together. But this one took about 6 months off and on. It was a struggle, but at the end, it was all worth it, because I looked at it and was like, oh my God, I made that. But it also led me to another piece that I wanted to do in much, much shorter time. And it is of my herald, or what I'm calling my herald, the Tora Sora, or sun tiger. And I've always had this idea of a tiger descending the sky, like the sun is above it and it's coming from the sun, descending the sky by walking on clouds. And so I started with this very rough sketch, which then went on to this drawing where I actually looked at tiger reference, the wing reference in blue, and then I blew it up, put it down on watercolor paper, and then in about 15 days, more or less, I painted this whole thing, because I wanted to see if I could do it in a short amount of time as opposed to the 6 months that it took me for Hanuman. I talked about my materials, my watercolor setup, and all of that, and I just kept going. Day 7, it's starting to look like something, and I just kept pushing those colors, especially the blue of the sky. and the wings and the tiger color. And then by, I think it was about day 15 where I stopped. And this was the final. And this is cut off from the board. I have the pencil here for size reference. So it's fairly large. And this one was done in the span of about 15 days, as opposed to Hanuman, which took me 6 months. And I like that contrast between them as I'm pushing myself. All right, these two were pivotal for my, I think, watercolor development, because it showed me what I could do in a long amount of time and a short amount of time. And then I just kept going from there. So the sun tiger, Tora Sora, made me come to the idea of the moon tiger, right? The opposite. So we have a sun tiger coming from the sun, descending clouds. That same can apply for the moon tiger. And so I created the two-tailed demon tiger or demon cat with bat wings instead of feathery wings. Again, descending from the moon on clouds in the dead of night. And that was the concept, and I show what I used to make it. And this is the final image. But one of the best things about making those two tigers, right, is that then it made me think about other things I can create, and especially character work. Now, one of the greatest contributions of that Tora Sora watercolor painting was that it led me to making my own character, Beautiful Beast Kiss. And this is the very first, this was October, I think, 2015, where I liked that the image of my herald, a winged tiger of the sun descending the sky. And I made that into a character, and that character has bounced through other things. And this was the very first image of her, I was doing Inktober, thinking about doing Inktober. And so the challenge was to make a character and then put that character or develop that character over the 31 days in October, involving inks. And so I started this character, and I really liked this image, and this image is important, and I'll show you why a little bit later. But this image right here was pivotal and the development of the character, as I was just coming from scratch. I just had the concept, sun tiger, wings, descending the sky, being kind of mythic, kind of godlike, and then from that, how it developed. So for that month, I did little drawings, working out the character. I did expression sheet, well, just a short expression. And this is her earliest look. She looks very, very different today, but I just kept doing that. And then the moon tiger, this is the first character development for that character, the demon cat, DC, in character form for also the ink studies. And I just kept playing with it. And I think one of the most interesting things for me to note is that this is art in time, right? How things begin can be very different than how they are today. So just from those initial ideas and concepts, some of it still applies today, but I had already thought of Beautiful Beast Kiss, jumping through dimensions, going on adventures, being a rather exuberant and outgoing character, going through trials and meeting all these other characters, including the Demon Cat and Moktun. And this is, right, and in every dimension she changes her shape. She can look a little younger, a little chibi, a little older, like a teenager, and then even as an adult. And also the same can apply to the Moon Tiger, which became DC, and their various forms. And that was 2015 Inktober. Just something to try out, right? Just an experiment for myself. But those initial ideas led me to the next year. This is October 2016, where this, I guess, the sequel to the Inktober of the previous year, I wanted to do a story from the different perspective of the Beast King and the Allspark, and how it ties in with her story. And I went through his approximate story of how he was created, born, and then all the things that, or obstacles that could then be led to for Beautiful Beast Kiss. This is the earliest form of Moktun. And Moktun is the youngest of the mythics that the Beast King gives an Allspark crystal to him. But he's lonely and sad, and it corrupts him. But then he eventually becomes your squire. And then other obstacles and creatures. This is the Oni Wilder Go. Just I'm thinking out in visual form. And that's what I like about challenges and doing things over time, like this daily challenge for the Inktober. Every day make an ink drawing. I really like this one of Cyberwolf. But it just, can you think of ideas in a short amount of time? Can you produce it and then get it to the blog? And this is the final image of the Beast King, who became the Sky Lord. And his element is electricity. And he also jumps through dimensions. And he is all powerful. And now he sits on his throne in the sky. And so that was the sequel to Beautiful Beast Kiss of the previous year. This is October 2016. And then to end the trilogy was 2017, Beautiful Beast Kiss. I try not to let series go on for too long. So I knew this was going to be the last of the Beautiful Beast Kiss Inktober, inking a day for that month. And I think I actually started on October 2nd for this one, but it's kind of sort of two images. But then in this, I wanted from her perspective how she starts out. This is like the very earliest form of her story worked out, how she meets Starbot, or who would become Starbot, and taking his crystal, and then how she's gathering strength, jumping through dimensions, meeting Moktun, who kind of went berserk on her, and how she fought him and gained access to his crystal. Right? This is the very early sad boy Moktun image. And right, making these stories in sequence. This is Beautiful Beast Kiss, Moktun, and Demon Cat entering in one of his revamped but still very early forms. But I think a challenge is great, and a great place to document that is like either a blog or Twitter or Instagram, wherever you can put your art out and you can get eyes on it, but also it's good for you to keep moving forward. And so that was the whole purpose of this story of Beautiful Beast Kiss. Can you make a story very short, 31 days in the month, and just keep it moving? Don't stop on any one thing, even if it looks, you can improve on it, but you got a limited amount of time. Do it, get it up, and move on to the next one. But again, art in time. This is now 2021, and I am still making art for Beautiful Beast Kiss, as now she is a comic series. But I did a more revamped, I kept drawing her over and over again, iterating on the idea. So she looks very different now than she looked in her first iteration. But I did a sketch, inked it, and then I knew I wanted to do it in watercolor. And so I did. And that is this one. So again, I'm combining the things that I enjoy, things that I like. There's a throughput for my art. I like doing characters. I like doing watercolors. if I can combine the two things, also like doing inking, which was why the Inktober challenge, I wanted to get better. But how something can start off and you can just get better by iterations. And by this time, I have a pretty good handle on Beautiful Beast Kiss as a character and her circle of friends. Again, we have Moktun, we have Starbot upper right, and on the far left, we have Demon Cat, DC. So it's iterative. You keep making art, keep testing your boundaries, and keep pushing. And you never know how things will turn out in the future. But as long as you keep drawing and keep moving forward, this is how it really started, just a very simple sketch. Right? And it's all I do. I just play with things, make a simple sketch, and if you like it, you can build up on it and keep moving forward. And one thing that I noticed that was interesting, this is 2023, and I did this drawing. It was just a very quick digital sketch using Clip Studio Paint, and then I kept working on it. I think I printed it out, drew on top to refine the features, and I noticed I'm getting better. Right? I'm getting better at anatomy. The figures can look more solid and put together, and that they actually have some weight to them. But this is all like building up. Right? It's taken a long time to get to a place artistically that I am capable of something like this. But I noticed something, that that image looks a lot like this image that I worked up in ink. Right? The pose is very similar, and I did not intend that at the time. I didn't even think about this image, but I guess maybe somehow it stuck, or it just seemed like a cool pose. That one looks a bit like this one, and I did not intend that. I did not look at the previous art when I made this. It just happened. But I think it's one of those cool accidents in making art, and then you can go back in time, like this is a time machine where I can see how things started and where they are today. But this is, right, I'm still, the comic idea is coming more and more into view. She's going on her adventures, and she's fighting the things that I thought of years ago, and that's pretty cool to see. And she keeps evolving. I keep making watercolors and different various versions of her, and I think I have her look down. Like I have a more of an idea of who she is, what she does, what's her personality like, and then I keep playing with it, and I keep making stuff. She has also expanded. She's expanded into everything I can think of, like watercolor, inking, and now digital Illustrator versions of her. So my process is a sketch to, if I want super clean inks, I do that in Illustrator now. But I can ink it by hand. I can take it into Illustrator if I need to. And if you'll notice, these 4 characters were also in some of the earliest stuff. Beautiful Beast Kiss on the far left. We got Demon Cat on the far right. The moon rabbit called Bunny. And then Birdie standing next to the Demon Cat. So everything, and I'm still making comics, fleshing ideas out and keep moving. And that is Beautiful Beast Kiss. So in my artistic journey, I have this idea for a character called Lore of the Silver Hand, who is my Conan equivalent, wandering swordsman. And I started with these very small ink sketches, right? This is either a ballpoint pen or a very rough, dirty, quick version done with Sharpie. But I kept drawing this character, this wandering swordsman like. And that led me to these very quick brush pen sketches of the character. And this is kind of where he started to take more shape. He was just an idea of a character, and at this point, he becomes an actual wandering swordsman in my mind. But these are just very quick brush pen doodles. I think I was taking some time out in the mornings before getting to actual work to just ink these out. They're very rough, unrefined, but I just kept going with them. He became a character all on his own. And that's how I find these things tend to happen, where you start with just a small idea, and then you just, by whatever means, right? It can be a ballpoint pen. It can be very, very simple, but if it'll keep coming back into your mind, and it'll keep coming up, and then at that point you're like, okay, I'm clearly into this thing because it keeps coming back, and then you just flesh it out and try to see how far you can take it in whatever medium or style that you feel comfortable with, or even if you don't, because eventually this idea of Lore of the Silver Hand became a black and white, or a way for me to learn how to ink. And that became its not main purpose, but I really wanted to figure out how to ink and ink better. So using this character as like an entryway, I did these drawings and I kept drawing the character, refining that, and then applying that into trying to get better at inking. And so I was trying different techniques, either ink washes, dry brush, hatching, cross hatching, using a really worn brush to make just dirty texture marks, and whatever I could think of, right? If I could lay down just an ink wash and then draw on top of that with hatching to see how that looks. And I just kept doing that. And eventually it led me to this project where I wanted to do an illustration of the character and how he became Lore of the Silver Hand, and that he encountered a monstrous unicorn, and he was cursed, I guess you could say. And so from a very simple sketch idea and how I build that up through a rough sketch, and this is what I would call a tight pencil version, with all the detail. And then I do the outlines in ink using nibs, crow quill pens, and even microns and Copic pens for the finer details in the inking. But just getting the outline, right, with all this detail was, that was rough. And then it led to, I fill in with spot blacks, broken brushes to make textures, and the skulls were pretty well. I had to do it over a few days, but eventually this was the result, and I really liked how this turned out. And I figure this is where I start to see all my inking work come together, right? Usually there's an inflection point where you're not sure you can do something, and then there's an image that seems to come together. But it's just all these little things or little art experiments stacked up on each other to come to a final image. And this was Lore of the Silver Hand's final image that I really like this one. But my pride and joy, my baby boy, is Willis Henry. And Willis Henry started way back in 2007. I was still in college at this time. And so this is the first iteration of what would become Willis Henry. So this page is full of ideas and concept work. I think I was an intern at either Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network at the time. And I think the character was, I was going through it. I was trying different sizes, shapes. Once I had the head shape kind of sort of down, that's when it kind of took off. But there's a lot of iterations in it, and a lot of experimentation, which is really good in the beginning. When you don't know what the character is, you can just go off and then see what the character becomes. But this is the first iteration. But that became this. But I think this image is the first time when the drawing felt right. It felt exact and on point. And it took me a lot of iterations to get to this point. But this was the first sketch where Willis Henry is now fully formed. And again, it's the idea that from the beginning, it can look very different from what it will eventually become. But once you find that spot, once it hits and it clicks and it all comes together, that is a great feeling. And that is when Willis Henry took shape. And then once I have a foundation to jump off from, then I have to go through the work of what are the exact colors. I did a slight turnaround, trying to see, body to head shape. Can I get, what are the colors for the characters? So I'm experimenting with, different colors for the suit, different colors, skin colors. And then what other characters are in his world, right? His father. I was doing story ideas and all the other characters that would be in the story. And so I was drawing him a lot. And eventually that leads to all these little expression slash action poses. Because I need to feel out what is his range of motion, because his head is very simple. It's very two-dimensional. And I wanted to see if his body can keep up with this style, right? Can I do action even when it's very, very simplistic? And then from 2007 to this is 2026. And so I've started redrawing the old stuff, the old art, to see if I can, there has been improvement in my art style, but I took the old drawings and I redrew them to try to make a better balance, knowing what I know now. And again, doing action poses, expressions, and trying to round out the character before I take it to the next dimension. But he has his sphere of influence. He has other characters. So this is an example of other characters in his world. Kiss, Quiss, which is a variation on Beautiful Beast Kiss, who's a friend of his. And also on the left is Finn, Princess Finn. And those are like the main trio of this saga. And these are some drawings that I did way back of all the characters that he could meet. Some characters become more important than others, like you need some background characters, but some you like so much that they become integral to the character and the story. And it's cool to watch that happen. So his father, the Chancellor, who was the mother of Kiss and Finn, the villains, Vex and Proteus. And then I needed, right, once I have the characters, I draw them, ink them, color them, because I want the best idea of how does this look. Right? And so the lineup, can I tell the characters from, are they distinctive enough on their own? How they look as a group? Here are some Illustrator versions for the clean inks to see if I can get the head shapes right in another program. And how does that look? And right, and this is this very super simple form of the idea of their simple head shapes. I want to define the characters. And does that work? So it's just ideas stacking on top of other ideas. This is another lineup of other characters that get developed more. Again, Kiss, the Sun Tiger. And this is DC, Demon Cat, another form, right, also brought into this world. So I don't really lose ideas. I usually fold old ideas into new ideas, which I think is, I don't know if all artists work like this. I think they do, but yeah. And this right here is some inspiration, what has inspired Willis Henry, Tetsuwan Atum, or Astro Boy, and Young Goku, one of my favorites, and especially The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. That video game was one of the major inspirations for Willis Henry and the whole series, because Princess Finn is a combination of Princess Zelda and Medley combined together. Right? And Link and Willis Henry are, to me, the princess and the knight. And then Kiss is a Tetra analog. So that game was very influential. And then how those three characters, rippled out into other characters. But again, it's iteration, right? You can start off simply, you don't know what the characters look like, but eventually in time, you get to know them. Drawing over and over again through repetition, you get a better idea of who they are, how they move, how they think. Are some shy? Are some exuberant? How do they feel? What do they like? Their dislikes? All of that. And it becomes a world that lives in your mind. And after that, now that I have stable, solid characters, I take it into Illustrator, try to get those clean inks, try to get a title design that I can work on, adapt with, and something that will grow with the series. You do color work, I do backgrounds, and it all leads back into the comic. And that's where we are today. Right? So this was June, last month, just before the anniversary, still making the characters and doing comic pages, still doing that. And then this is the latest one, June 3rd, still at it. Still at it from 2007 till today. And this is the time machine. This is why this blog has been, I think, the most powerful and influential website for my art. And that is a time capsule that charts almost my entire course from college to today, what I have thought about, where characters started, where characters what they have become. And that is why I love having this blog. And so that concludes my anniversary celebration of the blog, where I've learned many things. But what I've learned that sticks out the most is it has been a artistic diary of sorts, and how to take ideas and that I can iterate on them over time, and seeing patterns of things that I like, and how that also gets folded in, and things can change from where they start to how they eventually become. I've also learned to be much more consistent over a very long stretch of time, as this is a marathon, not a sprint. And it has kept me, with a consistent flow. So consistency is key. And also, it's just fun, right? Seeing all your art laid out, hopefully inspiring others and inspiring yourself, I would highly recommend anyone start a blog, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you can find. Just a place where you can put your art so that you can see it and others can see it. It's great. So I have been Trey Hodges. You can find my work at treyhodges.com or also on the blog. The link is in the description. Power to all the creators. Take care and keep shining, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. That's a wrap, everybody. Let's go.